All right, so today we are talking about thought distortions, and thought distortions are different ways of thinking that have been categorized into these what they call thought distortions. And they're basically these ways of thinking that are just a little disconnected from reality, and they could be just really not of service to us. Um, and we are all prone to these. And we'll get into there is one, two, three, four, five, six thought distortions that we're going to talk about today. And we're also going to give examples of how these thought distortions can be used in like our self-worth journeys to really apply them to us. And we're going to talk about how to maybe think about these things differently to start switching our perspective to a better way that's a little bit more like serves us along our journey better. Okay, so thought distortion number one is called all or nothing thinking. So, all or nothing thinking is classifying things as falling into only one of two categories or thinking in extremes. Okay, so this is like, I will never be able to learn to love myself ever, right? It's an extreme thing. I put it into, I either always or never, right? Always or never. It's that sort of like black and white kind of thing. You put it, there's only two options. Instead, there's typically really more, normally a ton of options and lots of ways to think about something. But when you have this thought distortion, you're limiting yourself to, this also can be called black or white thinking. Black or white thinking. Like it's either yes or no. Or it's maybe, right? Like there's also some things in between yes or no. So that's the way that we can kind of shift this way of thinking, is to know that there is always gray, right? It's never all or nothing. There's always something in between. I've got a comment that says, "Oh my God, this is so how I think. It's always black or white, never gray." What I'm so glad you were able to identify that already. So it's so when we can see it, then we can when we're doing it, we can catch ourselves and go, "Oh, I'm doing the black or white thinking there's got to be another option." As soon as we shift, right, we open that mind up to the possibility of it being something besides this or that, then other possibilities can become available to us. The thing is, we shut down the possibilities of anything else when we're limiting ourselves into these beliefs, right? Because these are also attached
Yep.
to our beliefs. Oh, let's stay on mute for right now. So, also, we do this with a lot with like our desires and what we think we're able to have. Have you ever heard anybody say, well, you can either have a fulfilling career or children? You know, you really can't have both. Or something like that, like of what you get to have. Well, there's many women that have fulfilling careers, husbands, children, all the things, and you really don't have to sacrifice like that. But that's a black and white thinking, to think that you have to like exclude or sacrifice like one thing. It can either be love or money, not both, right? There's always like these weird dualistic thinking things that get like stuck in our brains. So just remember, it's always gray. There's always a gray. There's always an in between. There's always varying degrees of things as well. There's always a spectrum, right, in between two options. And so we're going to start looking for the middle. We're going to start looking for the middle and looking for the gray. Thought distortion number two. And you'll have to forgive me because we have like the flu in my house and I'm just starting to get it. My son has it and I'm just starting to get it. So I'm like, my throat is on fire. Thank God we're on Zoom or you would all be getting sick right now. Okay. Thought distortion number two is mind reading. Assuming what other people are thinking. So an example of this would be like, oh my God, people will think I'm conceited or full of myself or egotistical if I embark on my self-love journey, right? If I start talking about that I love myself, everybody's just going to think I'm a narcissist, right? Just to decide that concretely, you know how other people are going to think, or you know it. Oh, I know. I saw the way that person looked at me. I know they're thinking I look fat right now. And then really that person at the gas station was looking past you and into the damn candy bar aisle, and they was thinking about getting a Snickers, and it had nothing to do with you, and you was like, they think I'm fat, right? And it's just, we do that. We attach things to our own beliefs or the things that we're thinking, and we project that stuff onto other people, and we think they must be thinking just like this. It's a comment saying that's what I do. We all do it. We all do it. But with this one, we're just going to make a commitment to not take anything personally, to choose to believe a different thing, right? Because that's maybe one option. But there's also a ton of other options about what somebody could be thinking. And I can choose to lean over here and focus on something else, right? I could be like, oh, he thinks I look good today. That person must think I look good. Or I can choose to think, oh, they must think I look fat, right? Or anything else, right? They could be thinking anything else. And most of the time, people are not thinking about you at all. But that's what that one is. Mind reading, assuming that we know what somebody's thinking about us or about anything else. And we're just going to decide, commit to assuming it's something good or asking, get clarification. We don't. Okay, so we're going to commit to assuming that they are thinking something good or something not bad, at least, or asking and getting clarification. Like if you think your best friend's mad at you because she hasn't liked any of your social media posts lately, and she hasn't answered your phone, and she didn't respond to that text you sent, then we're just gonna call best friend and say, I feel like you're mad at me. Like, are you mad at me? Because like this, I see this has happened. This is what I'm thinking. Is that true? And then trust that like they tell you the answer's true, right? Or whatever. So we can ask for clarification or just assume the best. I always try to assume the best. I go, she is probably super stressed out right now. I know she's got a lot going on. Da, 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 da. Right. So that's why she hasn't answered me. So I assume the best until I know better. Because I want people to do that for me. And in our program, we treat other people the way we want to be treated. So I wouldn't want somebody sitting around going, what a bitch. She didn't answer me. I can't believe. And really, I'm just over here trying to juggle 20 million things. And I couldn't get back to them in that moment or what have you, right? I want somebody to assume the best about me and assume like a logical, reasonable, real life scenario about why my behavior is off or something, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do that for other people too. So that one is mind reading. We're going to assume the best or ask for clarification. Next is thought distortion number 3. It is unhelpful rules. Unhelpful rules. We just make up some rules for life sometimes, and they're really silly, and we don't have to follow like all these strict rules. We made up somewhere sometime that it had to be a certain way, and now that's the rule. That's the rule for life. We're going to follow it. So something like an example would be, I must complete this entire How to Work program in exactly 16 weeks or I'm a failure. And if I don't do it exactly like this, then it means this, right? Or if I don't, well, let's be the person on the other end of my example earlier. How about if I don't answer the phone, they're going to think I'm mad at them. So it's a strict rule. I have to answer the phone every time so-and-so calls, or I don't know, whatever, like creating a rule about the way it has to be. And what we're going to do to shift this is we're going to figure out what we're creating weird rules around in our head. And then we're going to tell ourselves that we were the rule maker and make a new rule, or tell ourselves there are no rules. That's the one I like to use. I like to tell myself there are no rules. It gets to be literally however I want it to be. I used to, this was a rule that I used to put on myself, was that I have to clean the entire house. Like if I'm going to clean, it had to be the entire house. And I would tell myself that I wasn't allowed to stop or rest until all of these things were done. And I had to realize that like I put this weird rule on myself where I wasn't allowed. Like who said that? Like who said I wasn't allowed to do it in smaller sections or take breaks in between? Like only I said that. And that's why I was managing my life in that crazy way where I would just try to do it all in one day instead of pace myself, right? So I had to make a new rule that now the rule is I'm allowed to pace myself, right? So figure out what the role might be. If you have like an extreme behavior or something that you feel like this strong urge that has to be like that, figure out maybe what that role would be if it was in words and write a new one. Or throw out the fucking rule book and tell yourself there are no rules to life. You're the rule maker. You're the one that gets to like create it. So there is no rule book. Throw the whole thing out. All right, number 4, thought distortion. Number 4 is labeling. My voice, oh my God. Labeling is reducing something to a single characteristic or descriptor. Okay, reducing something to a single characteristic or descriptor. So something like my current beliefs are bad and the behaviors that I've had in my life so far are wrong. Like deeming something one way. And with this, I like to use that. You guys hear me say a lot of like neutralize the energy. And I use that with a lot of different things. And with this one, we're going to neutralize the energy by it's just a thing, right? My current beliefs aren't good or bad. They just are beliefs. Or the behaviors that I've had in my life so far are just the behaviors that I knew to have. They were just the ones that I was programmed with. They're just the ones that I learned. They weren't necessarily wrong. They were just what I knew to do at the time. I wasn't like doing all these wrong, bad, horrible things, right? It was just, they were just things to do. They were just these neutral behaviors. So reducing something to a single characteristic or descriptor. And we're going to, yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly right. It is what it is. Yeah, let it just be a neutral thing instead of putting that one single characteristic or descriptor. The next one is thought distortion. Number 5 is fortune telling. Fortune telling. And this is predicting the future. Now, where I might believe in psychics, and I think that we do have amazing intuitive abilities, and we can tap into some amazing infinite knowledge and possibly even connect to a future reality. it still doesn't mean that it's set in stone or that you're God and you know that that's the pathway that will unfold, right? We still have to let God be God. And so we're going to not predict the future in that way. So, and this is in a thought distortion way, right? Where maybe you have some kind of belief or history with something that made you think that things will always turn out this way. You guys might have heard me say this one before, but like that for me life is a roller coaster. Things get better and then they get worse every time. They get better and then they get worse, or that things get worse before they get better, right? That's like a predicting the future in like some weird unhealthy way. Like first of all, you don't know that things are going to have to get worse before they get better every time. That's a future predicting thing. And I always say it gets to be however you believe it's going to be. Like I choose to believe life gets better and better and better and better and better because I'm constantly evolve and grow and develop. And so it can only get better for me, right? That's what I choose to believe. And the example that I have here is if I set boundaries, I'll lose everyone in my life and be alone forever. So if that's predicting a future that may or may not be real, right? Can you potentially lose people if setting a boundary? Yeah. But boundaries typically make relationships 10 times healthier. So, like, that would be predicting the future in a way you don't know. Or, so what we're going to do here is remind ourselves that we're not God, we don't know everything, and where we can use our logical mind and our intuition to help us make judgment calls on what direction to go in. And I'm super encouraging of that. We're also going to balance this out by remembering that we don't know everything and not to use this in a way that hurts us, right? Or that isn't serving us. And doing this where we just decide that something will go bad or something will not be great in the future, like that doesn't serve us in any way except for to cause anxiety and things like that. So we're just going to learn to rein in our thoughts, right? We're going to learn to be a bit more in control of what we're thinking, and that's what this is all about. And lastly, number 6, thought distortion number 6 is exaggerated thinking. Exaggerated thinking. So making a situation into something bigger than it is. Have you ever been or known the person who makes a molehill into a mountain? And you're like, it's not even that bad. Like, what's wrong? That's not a big deal. But so my example of this self-worth related would be, oh my gosh, today I used a shameful self-talk. So now I'm horrible at self-love. There's zero hope for me. And I should just quit the entire program altogether. Right? Really, it was just a little thing, a little bump in the road. And I turned it into this horrible giant thing that was a life-ruining situation. And we can do this a lot. We can do this a lot. I used to do that a lot with embarrassment was a really hard emotion for me to learn to navigate when I was learning to become, not become, but return to being an emotional being after addiction, which is emotional being is our natural and normal state. And I was very uncomfortable with being an emotional being, but embarrassment was one that was so hard for me to navigate. And if I had like one little tiny embarrassing moment at a job, I would like be ready to quit the job. I'd be like, oh my God, I can never go back there. Oh my God. Or like you do something silly in front of somebody. Oh my God, I have to avoid that person for the rest of my entire life. Like I just made it, instead of it just being like something I could laugh off, it was a huge deal. So I had to really learn to reel that in that particular way. And I've got a me too down there. So I had to be like, you know what? No, it's not that big of a deal. Do you remember every embarrassing thing that everybody ever did? No, you forget that shit the second that you walk away. So they probably do too. Like, I had to learn to do that in a different way in my mind to where it wasn't a huge life altering, ruining thing. And then, we can do it with some little things too. Like this is one that I had to learn to reel in was anytime I was hungry going, oh my God, I'm starving to death. Literally every time I'm hungry, I want to say I'm starving to death. And then that makes me feel like I'm actually hungrier than I am. In reality, I ate, 5 hours ago and I'm not in any way starving. So like I just try to catch myself around. That's me. Every time. But I've never once in my entire life been starving. So it just doesn't serve us, when we go to these extreme places in our minds. It can do quite the opposite of serve us. So, in order for us to feel like we're in control of our minds, for us to feel like we're in control of our bodies and our emotions and our energy fields, we're going to learn to start here with some of these super common thought distortions, and we're going to start learning them, calling them out when we see them pop up in our realities. And then we're going to work to really, as quickly as we can, consciously shift that distortion to a more realistic way of thinking. Okay, guys. Okay, let's do some affirmations. Let's put our hands on our hearts and say, I am clear in my mind. I am logical. I am centered. I am balanced. I am deeply connected to reality. I am deeply connected to myself. I am right here in the present moment. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I am worthy. I am worthy of love. I'm worthy of health. I'm worthy of wealth. And today I choose to wear my crown. Thank you. I love you guys so much. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video about thought distortions and how they apply to our self-worth. I hope that you got so much value out of this. And if you haven't already, make sure you like this video and hit subscribe to get more amazing content in the future. Love you. Bye.